This is Jason of Metal Conjure here with Steffen of Obscura, and it's been last time you were here in 2018 with Beyond Creation and Archspire. It was an incredible show here. So much time's gone by. How are you, and how do you feel being back touring in the United States?
Well, first of all, we arrived a couple of days ahead of time simply to pre-produce the entire tour. We stayed in San Diego, and we simply enjoy more or less, well, everything over here, since Europe is in a permanent lockdown, depending on every country, and here everything seems a little bit more pragmatic. Everybody seems a little bit more open-minded, and you're, well, you can tell yourself if you want to wear a mask or not, if you're doing whatever you're doing. So everything here is a little bit more open-minded, and we are just glad we can go back on the road. We are just happy to finally tour, and well, we played the first show in San Diego. Afterwards, we played in Mesa, Arizona, and so far it was a rocky start, getting everything back together since the last US American tour we played was 2018.
Yeah,
and the last show was here at 1720. And now we are back 4 years later.
So I noticed yesterday the San Diego show, I didn't see David or Jeroen. I saw Gabe Sieber and Alex Weber filling in. And was there an issue about them coming over, or are they not performing live with the band?
They are performing live with the band, but Austria and the Netherlands are in a full lockdown, and the US embassies are closed. So we tried everything to get their visas somehow filed in Germany, but if you leave one of those countries, you stay 10 days in quarantine, and if you take a visa, you go back and then have another 10 days quarantine, and they would have missed the tour anyway. It's really extremely restricted. And one of them is also very afraid of the COVID, contracting COVID, and there has been also thoughts about if the tour is happening at all, because the risk is quite huge that you break up a tour in the middle of it, because shows are going to be cancelled and everything. But I was, in my opinion, I wanted to take the risk. I'm fine with that. I see the pros and cons. We are not naive. We see if it's going to happen, it's fine. If not, we have to, you have to be prepared for the best and worst case. And I'm rather taking the risk and play. And therefore, we have with Gabe Sieber on drums, wonderful person and also a very good drummer, as well as with Alex Weber, an old friend of mine who was here on the last tour because he was playing bass for Exist at the time.
That's right. Okay, yeah, I remember. So with everything going on, more than the pandemic, I think we've lost so much time in general, just with our lives and music and everything. For you and the band, what has gone on these past couple of years? You got to write the new album, Valediction, obviously, but is there anything you got to do differently while we couldn't, you couldn't perform or anything in terms of jobs or making money or just something different? What were you able to do for yourself, either to keep going and learn something while all this time we've lost?
Well, we as a band, we are a little bit more flexible than, for example, promoters or owners of live venues. So we can shift a little bit what we're doing at the moment. So that's a pro. And I always try to be optimistic. I'm an optimistic person. I try to use the time as good as possible. So what we did this time, since we didn't know when we are able to go back on the road, we focused on video production. That's the reason why we have 4 music videos for the new album out. We invited for the very first time a filmmaker, who's also on tour now with us, to produce an entire studio documentary. I think we released 12 or 13 studio episodes so far, so this was a huge project. The reason behind this is simply that we try to stay in touch with the fans. If we can't reach them through live shows, then somehow we basically open the door to see a little bit behind the curtain how everything works, producing the album and all that. So we simply try to shift from live shows to another side, another medium, to stay in touch with them, and that was quite successful, I say.
Good to hear. And we talked before about at the time you had different members with Sebastian, Raphael, and Linus, and talking about at that time about the new change in members. And a couple years later, there's been a whole new change in members. And I'm only asking because it sounded like to me that the three of them, all of you wrote songs in Delirium and everything. That there was it seemed like the three of them wrote a lot of the songs like together almost, and it's just a big change that you were the last one left and, trying to find the right members again. What was it like getting in touch with Jeroen and Christian again, and what was it like this time around? What did you learn about them as people, and what did you learn about them as musicians since they've now returned?
Oh well, I think every musician has his very own character when it comes to the instrument. So I wouldn't compare anyone. That wouldn't be fair because everybody plays a little bit different. When it comes to the human side, I was very surprised that they left because I didn't know anything about it. I got an email, hey, by the way, you have 3 options. And I said, this is not how it's going to work. So I'm quite bitter about it, to be honest. But that's something I learned. Don't trust anyone. Anyway, but Diluvium was written as a collective.
Right.
So we all wrote the entire album together. That's exactly how the same approach how we always wrote albums or even the demos back in the day. So it's always a collective effort. I don't want to pick anyone or someone out to do more or less. That's not fair. It's always a collective. If you take one of the musicians out and put somebody else in, it would sound different. Because I always try to underline the strengths of each musician.
Right.
For example, David now, he is extremely focused on, or his ability and talent I see is playing high-speed patterns, because he's still grooving somehow with his push-pull technique in drums. The same goes for Jeroen. He has a different sound than the bassist who played before, or the bassist before the bassist. So I always try to underline the character of each musician. I don't need a session musician who can play everything, because then it's soulless. I want to have somebody with a character. That's my focus.
I can see that. And speaking about David as well, talked about his introduction in the band. He's quite young. I think he's like barely 30, 31. He's like he's been around a little bit, but tell me about from a songwriter and a guitarist perspective, what does he do? I've noticed on the new album of Valediction, like a lot of like in the beginnings, there was like these great cymbal, like these little cymbal, like little flurries he would do, and then you're right, still keep up with that high tempo. What can for me in the pandemic, I've appreciated drums more than I ever have in my life. It just kind of like, for some reason, I've always appreciated him, but not to the level I have now. So I'm very curious. What is he like as a drummer in terms of what can you explain about his style, so you can say?
I see David as a very, very gifted musician who understands the big picture of a song. So in case the guitar's bass are very busy, he rather takes his drum abilities back. In case there's some room, his arrangements are a little bit more busy, so he tries to keep the dynamics of the entire song very, very fluent, and this is a strength. Because sometimes if you play with virtuosos, they want to show off basically every second.
Right.
But with David, it's different. He has a very nice overview also for the entire songs, the arrangements, and he was, of course, like everybody else, involved, but he also gave his ideas. He's not holding anything back or anything behind the bush. I think within the first 2 weeks, he was basically involved.
Okay.
Very open-minded person, and fantastic guy to hang out with.
And did he actually write songs in this record?
No.
Oh, this time, okay. So it's one of the first members that didn't actually contribute to writing this time, right?
No, that always different. I mean, we had so many different people in the past. I always see it as a collective effort.
Right.
And even as I mentioned, neither Jeroen or David wrote entire songs, but they still influenced each composition of Chris and myself. So it's a teamwork.
Okay. And I like to talk about the new album. I've noticed, like when I heard it, there was a lot more like fast-picking riffs, and it seemed, I would say, like more. If there's maybe 7 to 8 tracks on like per song on a studio album, I felt there was maybe like 5 or 6. I felt it was a little more stripped down. As technical as the band is, I felt there was a little more breathing room, I guess, a little more out in the open. Like a lot of the beginning intros, like with the very fast picking, then a little more neoclassical guitar, and some of the solos I've kind of noticed, it just seemed a little more like aggressive, but not like, I don't know, like it felt a little more stripped down, like more right in your face. Talk to me about the process of making a Valediction.
Well, there was a certain aim we had. Since Obscura is a live band, we play more shows, or we spend more time on stage or traveling around than in the studio. So some of the songs we play basically every night, like the Evergreens, Acrosis, Anti-Cosmic Overload, Emergent Evolution. We have to play those songs. And I wanted to go away from too much polyrhythm, because we overdid it a little bit on the last record. It's a very technical record, but if you write something in that direction, this also demands a very crystal clear production. and I want to bring a little bit more breath and air into the entire album. So we reduced this a little bit. It turned out to be a little bit more straightforward, but this gives you more room simply to unfold the human touch within the production. It really breathes. So we didn't polish everything because you don't need to.
Right.
And therefore it has a more aggressive attitude, I think. It's more written for the live situation than for the audiophiliac who is sitting at home with, I don't know, €5,000 headphones.
Right. I know. I see what you mean. And also, I noticed too that you talked about the writing, the compositions. Christian wrote, I believe, he co-wrote the first 10 and the 11 songs on the record. So it sounded like he had a lot of like overall writing say compared to everything else. So I mean, what was it like writing with him again? And I noticed on like some of the parts at the end of the Neuromancer, after the solo, there was like this like extra like melodic like twin guitar together. What was it like bringing him back in this with the writing process? What did he see? Did he see the same as you? What did he bring this time around with the record?
Well, of course, we talked before he rejoined the band, and I was very clear in which direction I want to go, and that simply, well, hit together very, very smooth. Together, basically, Chris and me, we wrote the songs of the album.
Right.
And everybody has an equal saying within the songs, and some songs we didn't change anything because they simply felt nice as they are. Some we simply rearranged and vice versa. So it's a very open way to work together with everything.
I get that. And other thing is with the as well. This time around with again with the new album, you just mentioned it about like doing different kind of songs, and I talked with the bassist of Psychroptics, Todd Stern, a couple years ago about the live music setting. When a new album comes out, you have to play the new stuff, you have to play this, and then like it's just the same kind of cycle. I actually appreciate when the bands play the newer record more, but it just there's so many songs of discography of all the bands that we'll never get to hear. Like, and I don't know. I wish like there would be a different. I don't like the greatest hits of a band. I want to hear, even if it's not my favorite songs, I want to hear just different songs because each tour tells a different story. How do you? How is making a set list in terms of, is it from the band? Is it from one person? Is it just what you believe the mindset is for the tour coming up? Like, it's difficult to make a good set list, right? Like,
Yes and no. I mean, we have a new album out, so we are not a retro band. We are not playing,
Thank you.
I don't know, the 20 years of something album for the sake of it. The focus of the new tour is basically the new album. So we are looking forward, not backward. We still have like a nice mix of evergreens, or songs we have to play, but we also mix every now and then. So we didn't focus on the most technical songs this time. We simply thought about how to arrange an entire dynamic show from front to end. What would be interesting if you would put yourself into the perspective of a fan? What would you like? That's my approach, because I'm still a fan of so many bands out there. I want to see, and I hopefully get to see again if Euro opens again. So that's more important to me. I'd rather see new material than the evergreens forever.
Agreed.
But I know fans always want to hear some certain songs.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't believe in a greatest hit. Like, it's the same story. It's the same, like, telling of a story when each tour should be different on its own, even if it's, like, 2 or 3 tours of the new album. And for Devoured Usurper, I noticed that was the only album where you did low growls, I've noticed. Was there a different approach because of the more, spacious material, the faster material? Were the lower growls not really necessary in this, or how did that decision? Was that just natural, or was that a conscious decision?
I didn't overthink everything, to be honest. Those lower growls, they work the best if you have like mid-tempo songs. And with Devoured Usurper, I think there's only one on the album.
Yeah,
everything else is a little bit faster, and I feel the super low growls don't fit to the fast material. That's simply my feeling, and therefore we just try a little bit here and there. We focused a little bit more on clean vocals. We changed the use of the vocoder on the new album entirely. It sounds a little bit different, more like a choir, synthy something, and we just try to keep it interesting. So let's see, maybe the next album will contain more growls, depending on the material. I mean, the song defines basically how everything else going to be built around it.
I also think it's good. It's good because you mentioned that, like, when I saw the show the other day, that certain songs have that growl, so it's almost like a less is more. So when we heard it, it was more of like a surprise instead of just the same vocal approach. It changes up. You're right. The change up. The change up, which I think is
contrast, basically. Yep.
Right. And you mentioned too changing up in like the middle, like I thought the whole song would be very slow, and then you have that da na na na, that really faster kind of riff.
Upbeat.
Yeah, and then just kind of like I really appreciate, like, 'cause it turned me. I thought it was gonna be like a slower song, like Ocean Gateways, but it just like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, and then bringing that back in that same speed with the vocals. Tell me, what is it like making those kind of tempo changes? Is that something that is that more of like a drummer's like touch of things, or is that like, what is that? I like to know more about those kind of like quick manipulation of tempo things. I like those aspects.
Especially in this song, it was more something we had decided internally. Chris came up with the idea because it's exactly the opposite. Like it's a D beat, maybe Entombed would use on their old albums. Mm-hmm. It's exactly the opposite. What would you expect from a technical or progressive death metal band? It's caveman music, so to say. And we thought, okay, let's do that because nobody will expect that exactly this is going to happen. The fun part is I talk about especially this part or this song so often in every second interview because it's this contrast, the unexpected. That's quite cool. So the idea was basically a fun thing within the band, but it turned out quite well.
And with again all the time with the new is there more material already been made like coming up? Like, did the band want to like make more like studio, like either more work kind of ready, or just focus on this album and then when touring became more available? Like, what's the focus coming up like for the rest of the year? Is it just because you mentioned about the visas, it's like one calendar year you get your visa, so it's like you want to get all the tours you can from that, right? Is that the plan this going forward if things are normal?
We always work in album cycles, so I think the next 2, maybe 3 years we are constantly touring. We already announced a European tour. For fall this year, we have a couple of festivals, very big festivals coming up, and I think it's the first time we play with Metallica in Europe, so that's really cool. I'm really looking forward for that. And for 2023, we also have a couple of tours lined up, basically all over the world, and somewhere in between. Let's say, I don't know when exactly, but we at a certain point we just start writing a new album. Right now, I don't focus on that. I'm entirely wrapped into stage production at the moment. We have something new here compared to the last time. We have a fully programmed light show with stage props and all that. This is a new field for the band. So we try to, first fix this until it works. You've been in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Let's see, we have a bigger stage here. Ooh. How it looks now.
Okay. So those music videos, like that production, it kind of stayed with you, huh? Hey, let's bring that to the live show when everything was ready, right? Because you say all those music videos, all the production in, those kind of places, it kind of stuck with you. Hey, let's bring it on live too, right?
It was a little bit exactly the opposite, because I first designed the entire live production. So I constructed everything, I designed everything, I made everything ready to be printed. And then we thought, okay, the last music video of all the 4 should be some kind of a spoiler for the live shows. So we had to print, produce and build up the entire live show as it is here half a year ago when we filmed the music video. So that was connected on purpose.
Oh, nice. A little more Easter egg from the band. Like you're right. I appreciate now, like with technology, you can see more of what the band is like. You can see podcasts now bands that we grew up with are talking about things you never knew about. Oh, that's why that tour did that. Oh, that's why that did that. I think it's a nice thing we can appreciate now with technology and how advanced it is,
Absolutely.
And I always make the comparison with guitar players like with Dave Mustaine and Marty Friedman. When you hear Marty's solos back in Megadeth, you knew it was him. When you heard Dave's solos, you knew which kind he was doing. I like to talk the dynamic between you and Christian in terms of like guitar players. How would you say, what is your style like, and what does his style like consist of?
Hard to say. I think Chris is playing very unique. So you hear within a second who is playing which solo, so that's quite cool. My style, I don't know. Chris is the guy who basically composes every solo. I'm not.
Even the ones that you perform?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's half-off. So first I improvise, then I write it down on sheet music, Guitar Pro, and then I see what I can build out of it. So it's like a 50-50 process. So my approach is entirely different. While Chris first writes everything down, and then he takes the guitar. So it's a different approach, but different characters, different players. And we have a couple of trade-off solos.
Yeah.
Just for the fun of it. And there are also some Easter eggs, because the album goes to 11, literally, like Spinal Tap.
Wait, there's 11 songs, right?
Yeah, 11 songs.
Right.
The first song, Forsaken, contains 11 solos on purpose. So it's pretty much
okay.
funny.
No, I appreciate those kind of details, and just it's something that that was my first time seeing Christian play live, and I only saw clips of Necrophagus back in the day.
Oh, that's a long time.
Yeah, and Spawn of Possession a little bit here and there. So it was just great to see like that style of him still, and I'm so glad he's still able to play. I know he's nursing that hand, and he's got to do that. So I'm glad he can still play and perform and all that. So going forward. Again, we don't know if this is going to keep going. We don't know if time's going to be taken away from us again. Aside the tours, aside the festivals coming up, what do you personally want the band, what level, either popularity or not, or music or anything, like for the person of Obscura who made the band, what would you like to achieve? What is left on the bucket list? I mean, what else would you personally really like to do, even if it's off the wall, even if it's something different? Is there a special request or something on that bucket list that you would really like to achieve? Maybe it'll take a couple years, but that's a new goal you want to have.
Well, I always have small wishes, and I build up the band piece by piece by piece since 20 years. And what I want to achieve is simply the fact that everybody who's playing in the band enjoys what he's doing. That's my biggest aim. I simply do not want to go on tour because I have to. I don't want to do an album because I have to, because I want to. That's my aim. I simply want to keep the joy of making music, because I see so many friends who also play in touring bands that are simply burned out. I've been there as well 10 years ago. So I simply want to keep it smooth. Keep the rock and roll. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy traveling the world. Play for your fans, because that's why you're there. Not the opposite. Some people think that. So keeping this, and of course I want to play some tours with people I really respect. For example, Testament, Megadeth. That would be amazing. Gojira, Creator from Germany. We never played with a German band, I think, or toured with a German band so far. So that would be fun.
Like ever? Not even a small opener, headliner, nothing, huh?
No, I think we once had a band from Munich touring with us, and in Germany, small tours. But I mean, like one of the bigger bands from Germany, we never did that. We never had the chance to do that. I would like to go to South America. I would like to visit China and Russia. There's so many spots in the world I never visited, not even privately. So
traveling is playing music, traveling is one of the best ways you get to do all that, playing music, so many opportunities. A few more questions. Again, thank you so much for your time. What, with everyone that writes, everybody that contributes, like you, even like when I talked to you a few years ago with the past members, that was still important to you. Everyone contributes. Everybody has a say.
Yep.
So are there any like quote unquote rules in terms of that everyone kind of knows to make sure that everybody can have a say, everybody can have an opinion, everybody can have an idea with the music or just life? Do you guys have like a certain golden rule or a silent rule that everyone kind of maybe either agreed upon, or something that just would want to extra make sure that everything would, you said, be as happy and content? Any special rule or anything?
Hard to say. I mean, the band is basically my band.
Right.
That's quite clear. So I give the directions, and everybody's welcome to contribute. If you like that, you're very welcome. But if you don't like this direction or something, then maybe this is not the right thing for you. But so far, if you want to join, you're very welcome. And then we work together with everything. That's quite cool. So I keep the musicians in the music cycle, and I take away from them everything else that has to do. I mean, they're always like the visa stuff. There are always some issues I do not want to have covered to the band. I basically take this off from their shoulders. So the musicians should contribute that what they can do best. The band. We make music together, and if you start bringing other topics into that group, then it's going to be complicated. Therefore, we just have a management, we have a PR company, public relations, and then makes everything a little bit more easier for everybody because you have less pressure on your shoulder. And that helps a lot. So I'm coordinating everything. I'm basically the guy in charge, and decisions are made on my table. But still, in every department, everybody's fine to say. It's not a dictatorship, but I show the way.
Okay.
It's a thin line in between. I understand.
I know what you're saying. And my last question is, made the band 2002, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. So it's been 20 years now for the band. What have you learned growing up with the bands that we listen to, the bands you grew up with, your vision and what you want for Obscura? What have you learned, I guess, from when you first started the band to what you like to today, 20 years of time? What have you personally learned the most about yourself? The peaks, the valleys, the good, like everything about it, the good times, the bad moments. What big lesson have you taken from starting to now that is keeping you here and just, what I guess more of I would like to know, what were you like at that time, and what did you the things you thought then were going to happen now, were your goals completely different? What was it like for you starting this project, this band, this creation that we all enjoy and love, that we can see on our side as fans to musicians, but from the musician himself, what was it like starting the band, and where were you at that time?
I was a kid, and I formed a band when I was 16, 17. No, I turned 17. I picked up a guitar with 16, and half a year later we formed Obscura. And it was just for the sake of the music. And this is something I want to keep up to this day. In the time in between, I learned so many very valuable lessons. For example, the very first time we entered the United States, we played a support tour for Cannibal Corpse. We got invited by the band. And they took us aside, they showed us how everything works in the States. They treated us excellent. And I only hear so many similar stories from other bands, the underground bands that got the chance to tour with them. And this was a very, very good lesson, because somehow we are now in the position that we do headliner tours. That means we pick all the bands that are going to play with us, and we treat them exactly the same. So if you're a support band on Obscura tour, you get treated the same way. You're part of the team. You're part of the entire touring cycle. You're not somebody who is waiting outside in an alley where it's windy and rainy and don't get anything to eat. No, it's not the case. And you treat somebody how you want to get treated. That's a golden rule my parents gave me 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and this is something you have to somehow translate to the music scene as well. Of course, there are assholes, there are people that try to fuck you over. That happens everywhere. But if you keep it positive and rather optimistic and just treat people nice, it will be fine.
Your energy is very infectious, and I'm very glad there's someone like you in your position to create the music you make and to help others, and to help get exposure and get eyes and get ears and get people as much into the other bands as possible, to where then they can be in your position in a couple of years, and we keep a good cycle going, a good cycle of bands. I think it's very, very important, and I can feel that from you. And as someone who's been going to shows for 25-something years, I tremendously appreciate it, because that's what keeps this going and this big tour and things, and I'm grateful for that.
The scene is so small. Everybody knows each other, and well, we had it so often that a local band turned out to be a touring band, turned out to be a very successful act. In our position, we brought Beyond Creation to Europe for the very first tour in Europe. They've been a local band in, I think, Montreal, when we played there for Omnivium in 2011 or something.
The Aura came out then, yeah.
The same happened with Fallujah. The same happened with Fractal Universe, with a couple of other bands from Europe. So you never know. If there's a cool local band, just take them on tour. That's how you support each other. We started the same. We got picked by Cannibal Corpse, by Children of Bodom, by other bands. Not because they had to pick us, because they liked the music. And we do exactly the same. And this is how the scene works, in my opinion.
A good scene, a very good scene. I agree. Any last words? It's a big. How many days of this tour? What, 30, 40, 34 dates, 35 dates? I can't remember. It's a lot.
We just added 3 shows in Mexico.
That's great.
And
Okay.
in total, it's 47 shows.
Wow.
And this is number 3. So let's see. We can make some photos before and then afterwards.
That's cool. Great. Okay, so anything you'd like to say for the next 47, 46, 47 shows? Be here for a while. Anything you'd like to say for your last word about for tonight, the rest of the tour, and what we can expect on this?
Shows are happening again. Come to the concerts, support all the bands on the bill, and well, just have a good time. It's about time shows are happening again. Events are there. Enjoy your life.